So we talk about money, right? I hope you guys talk about money. You talk about what you want to do on a holiday when you go away, because this is important to you. So you want to make sure that you actually get the best out of it. And this is the same thing with sex. It's impossible, well, I would say it's highly unrealistic for two partners in a sexual relationship to be 100% on the same page sexually, which means we need to talk about it. We need to navigate it. We need to figure out what our preference and wants are, pretty much the same way how we do with anything else within the relationship. And those couples who talk about sex have a much better quality sex, or at least they have a much better chance of having it the way they want to have it, because they actually tell each other what they like. Welcome to Real Relationships, a real and honest podcast about the inside world of working with close relationships. I'm Alona Serpentine, a couples therapist, a sex therapist, and a relationship educator. Here, I draw the curtain on how close relationships work, interview other relationship professionals, share behind-the-scenes stories from my own practice, and also invite couples, families, and individuals of all kinds to speak about their journey and their real relationships. We as humans cannot live without others. This is why I hope that by sharing the stories and reality-tested information from real professionals and real clients, more people will enjoy fulfilling, supporting, and successful relationships. If you want to have one of those, or make your existing ones even better, and I can't imagine you are not, tune into our episodes released twice a month on Thursdays. And to stay up to date with what we have to share, subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform or join our Facebook group, Real Relationships. Stay tuned and stay real. Welcome everyone. It's Alona Serpentine, a couples therapist and a sex therapist. So if you have been listening to my podcast, Real Relationships, for a few weeks now, you probably know that I typically interview various professionals who work with relationships. And this is a very useful format, which I think is interesting and engaging because it gives me an opportunity to share with you not only about what I do, but also what other professionals working in this space do, what they're passionate about, and also, I guess, share some of the tips of the trade that typically only kept to those who work in those professions. We spoke with Annette Lakey from Lakey Family Law, who is a family lawyer. We also spoke to Bonnie Douglas from Smoother Separations, who helps couples separate amicably. And if you noticed, they are all people who have profound experience and knowledge in the field that they do. And planning to continue those interviews because I find it not only very interesting to hear what other professionals working in this whole relationship space do, but I also think they share a lot of their personal insight, a lot of their own reflections that can be very, very useful for those who are going through difficult times or for those people who just would like to be better in relationships. But I guess today's podcast is going to be a bit different because it's going to be my first solo podcast where I'm not being interviewed by anyone or where I'm not interviewing anyone and I'm actually the speaker and I'm the person who is sharing with you what I believe in and what I do. And being a couples therapist and also, as I mentioned, the sex therapist, I just want to invite you into my everyday of working as a therapist, working with couples, but also with individuals, and to give you an opportunity to start maybe understanding what does a person like myself actually deals with on a day-to-day basis. And because I find it always, I guess I struggle to speak on my own for a prolonged period of time, what I've done, I've asked my colleague Marsha, who is our admin superstar at Alice Place, our counselling practice in Mornington, Victoria. I've asked her to put together a list of 10 true or false questions one might ask a relationship therapist like myself. So I'm going to use those questions today to guide the conversation, to guide my podcast, and maybe that will be quite interesting. Because what I will do, I will start every segment by basically raising the question saying, okay, so what do you think? Is it true or false? And then I'm going to give you my perspective on it and what I believe it is, whether it's true or false. I do want to say straight away, I don't want to, and it's true to pretty much anything we do in the therapeutic world, everything is quite subjective. So whatever I'm going to share with you is mainly going to be my personal experience as a therapist, but also as a professional who has qualifications both in relationship therapy and in sex therapy. So let's see how we're going to go with that. All right. So the question number one I have here from Marsha is it true or false that most people say they want more sex because they want pleasure and closeness? Well, it's interesting because indeed sex has a very different meaning to all of us. And for some people, it can be about pleasure. They just really enjoy that physical intensity of two bodies. They really enjoy the sensations. You can say they're highly sensual and sensual people. And for them, sex is an opportunity to enjoy that pleasure. It's an opportunity for them to enjoy, to really experience a certain type of pleasure, a certain sensation that they find extremely fulfilling. And yes, sex definitely is synonymous with pleasure for many people, but not for everyone. Not for everyone. In general, sex can be seen as a fun and enjoying exercise or activity to do, but it's not necessarily the only reason why people want to have sex. Probably from my experience as a couples therapist, when couples talk about sex and when they say, hey, we are not really very sexual with each other and it's causing a problem for them, very often it is actually about feeling disconnected. It's about not feeling close enough, because in many instances, people view sexual activity, whatever it looks like, and there are so many different versions here. It's definitely not only the stereotypical penetrative sex that we all kind of think about when it comes to sex. No, there is a whole variety of sexual activities, and the sexual menu is actually quite large for many, many people and very diverse. But when they talk about that in a couples therapy setting, very often it's about, I miss my partner and I want to reconnect with them. And because sex is the ultimate evidence of that reconnection, it's the ultimate way of expressing this connection, which also in most cases we typically only share with our loved one, with our partner who we commit to, which also makes it very reaffirming. Because as one of my clients recently said, I can hire someone else to tidy up the house or to do some repairs, but I don't want to have sex or be intimate with anyone else but you. So it's that sense of exclusivity, that sense of specialness that we only give and only receive during sex with our partners. So I would say definitely it's about pleasure and closeness, but I probably would say if there is a bit of an issue within the relationship and sex is seen as something that is missing, then very often it's about feeling disconnecting and seeking closeness. Next question I have here is, talking too much about sex makes it mechanical. Well, that's definitely false in my experience. I typically say to my couples who talk about sex have more and better sex. Because again, our sexual scripts and our sexual menus are very, very diverse. And if we don't really know what our partner wants or what excites them, what they expect in the bedroom, or maybe not in the bedroom, anywhere else where you would like to have sex, then how do you know if you don't talk about it? It's actually very, very simple. So we talk about money, right? I hope you guys talk about money. You talk about what you want to do on a holiday when you go away, because this is important to you. So you want to make sure that you actually get the best out of it. And this is the same thing with sex. It's impossible, well, I would say it's highly unrealistic for two partners in a sexual relationship to be 100% on the same page sexually, which means we need to talk about it. We need to navigate it. We need to figure out what our preference and wants are, pretty much the same way how we do with anything else within the relationship. And those couples who talk about sex have a much better quality sex, or at least they have a much better chance of having it the way they want to have it, because they actually tell each other what they like. And for some couples, especially for those couples where one partner is quite verbally stimulated or likes talking about things in general, and I'm sure you all know people like that, or maybe even experience that in your relationship, just talking about sex, about something which can be a little bit spicy, a little bit unusual, can feel quite exciting and actually sexual as well. So talking about sex can be quite arousing. So yes, that's definitely a false statement. Talking too much about sex does not make it mechanical. It's actually the opposite. It's much more likely to be very, very good for you to talk about sex. Let's pick another question, which is not talking specifically about sex. Okay, I've got here one. It says, communication challenges, a major complaint of couples presenting for counseling. Whew, that's an interesting one because, yes, I would say in 90% of cases, the couples who walk in through my practice door do say we need better communication. Yes, they often share with me and with my colleagues that they have communication challenges. However, communicational challenges very rarely the real cause of the problem. This is, again, in my experience. I always see communicational challenges as a symptom of an underlying issue. And typically, the underlying issue is, I don't feel loved by you, or I don't feel it's working, or I don't feel you care, or I don't think you understand. You may care for me, but I'm not sure whether you actually understand me. So this is when a couple starts experiencing communicational issues, when their relationship as such is struggling overall. And that is all coming through in communication. Yes, we do still want a good communication, because good communication actually the tool that we have to address those issues. This is how we can resolve them. This is how we can work on understanding each other and getting where we want to be. But very often it's about the underlying needs and wants that each of us has and each of us should have when it comes into the relationship not being met. So yes, communication challenges are a major complaint of couples presenting for counseling. So this is true. However, it's not necessarily the reason why they actually seek counseling. Another one, a therapist is a super problem solver. Well, to be honest, I wish that was true, so that you can all walk in and within, I don't know, half an hour or 90 minutes of a therapy session, I can wave my magic wand and all problems are gone. No, that's definitely not how it works. It would be nice for us to have that superpower, but our role is actually not to solve your problems. Our role is to guide you through professional experience, through asking the right questions, through sharing with you our perspective on the relationship, but mainly through improving the dialogue between the partners and bringing to the surface what is actually bothering you, what is actually going on, so that you guys can then look at it together with us in the room and say, oh, okay, now it's starting to make more sense to me. And now I think I know where the road is heading to, where I should go and what we should do as a couple to make our experience better. So you can probably view us more as educated guides rather than problem solvers. It's a false statement. No, we're not super problem solvers. We don't have those superpowers. I wish I had a magic wand, but we don't. Let's pick another question here. So what else do I have? I've got another question which says, small everyday moments or bits for connection with the spouse or with the partner are the building blocks of a relationship. This is definitely true. Sometimes I see couples that have been together for a very long time, and once upon a time, they were rainbows and miracles and unicorns, and this was just a never-ending love story, which was amazing. And if you had that experience, this is fantastic, and you've been very, very fortunate, because not every couple goes through this magical state in a relationship where everything is just like in a technicolor, in a 3D, if not 5D experience, and your whole senses are firing up and you feel most alive, which is absolutely probably the best experience one can have, in my personal opinion. And yes, you may have gone through this, or you may have never experienced that, but instead maybe you experienced a true sense of security with someone. Somebody was really present for you and cared for you and was always there when you needed them. And that on its own meant a lot to you. But our human memory is unfortunately not set in stone. Things fade away. And if we don't have constant reminders, those things become so faded, so distant, that eventually we even start doubting, have they actually ever happened? Or was it just a dream that I had? And because of that, if we want to nurture a relationship, it's like with anything really. It's actually universally true. We want to maintain that. And we don't need to do big renovations every couple of years, like giving your partner a diamond ring or going away on a most expensive holiday you can find, or having, what else can you do? For example, going on a trip together, like on a new adventure together every couple of years, which can still be really, really good and reaffirming. But your job is to make sure that your partner, when you offer them that trip, is actually wanting to go there, rather than thinking, oh, I'm not sure. We haven't been talking for the last several years, really, about anything important. Or when was the last time we shared a close space with each other without clothes on? So we want to keep that maintenance in the relationship so that every day you feel close as much as possible. And typically, the thing is, you don't need really too much effort for that. A simple I love you, a simple maybe text message saying, hey, I'm thinking about you, or a quick phone call, or a cheeky snap sending via text of something sexy, or it could be even just, hey, I know you really like lasagna, I made it for you. So little things that typically don't need to cost anything, or maybe not that much, that's what actually matters, as long as you do them often and frequently. Typically, I would say you want to have at least, a handful of those a day. Let's say 5 things a day. So you wake up in the morning, you're rushing, getting your kids ready to school, probably not enough time to be very romantic. But when you rush to work afterwards, or one of you is rushing to work, make sure you give each other a kiss. Make sure you wish each other a good day. Make sure you give each other a hug. And then maybe during the day, if you think about your partner, send them a text or give them a call, or even send them an email. And then when they come home, check in, how was the day? How did they go? It doesn't really cost anything. You just ask, hey babe, how are you going? How was your day? Let's talk. I care about you. That's what they're actually saying. I've been thinking about you. I don't really want to talk about the kids. I don't want to talk about money. I don't want to talk about, politics, unless you're both really into politics. I just want to know how you are, because you matter to me. I like you. You're important to me. So those little things. I know we're all busy, and our lives nowadays are probably busiest than they've ever been in humankind, because we've got so much and so many expectations. And unfortunately, all the technology that we have is not actually necessarily making it easier for us. It's actually making us feel we need to work even harder. But those things that I'm talking about, they are not huge. They are not expensive. And most of us are more than capable of doing them. So that motto, or that mantra of small things often, that's what's keeping those relationships alive. And that's what's making those big splashy things that you do particularly nice. because you've got the ground. Your foundation is there. When you basically water the earth with those lovely gifts and those lovely gestures, it's not completely dried out so that all water is just running away through the creeks, through the cracks, and you just feel like, oh, where did it all go? It was so much, but it all just disappeared. No, instead you want to have nicely moist, fertilized, probably even ground of your relationship, that as soon as you add something to that, let's say you plant a new beautiful flower, or you sprinkle some lovely, magic over it, it's actually taking it in a nice way. And if you plant some seeds there, those seeds actually growing because you haven't been neglecting the foundations of your relationship. So 100%. Small everyday moments, what we call beads for connection with your partner, are the building blocks of a relationship. That's absolutely true. Okay, let's see what else we can do. Another one I've got here, going back to intimacy and sexuality. On average, most people never feel anxious when it comes to intimacy. Well, you probably know the answer to this. Most of us have some degree of anxiety when it comes to sex and intimacy. Why? I guess this is something quite vulnerable, quite profound, and because also some societal expectations and our own expectations of ourselves and how things should be, we do feel pretty worried about our sexual performance and whether we are up to scratch when it comes to the bedroom activities. So it's absolutely normal for us to feel a little bit anxious and a little bit worried about sex, whether we do it often enough, whether we do it the right way, whether we last long enough, whether we look good enough, whether we smell and taste good enough. These are all very common worries when we talk about sex. And if you ask, okay, so what do we do? Or what can help me to feel less anxious? I'll probably say it's the same like with anything. When it comes to anxiety, we typically want to do two things. One, we want to talk about it with the person who cares most, which is your partner in this case, and be open with them. Hey, babe, I'm really worried about this. I'm really worried about how I look, and that's why I want you to turn off all the lights when you want to have sex with me. And just have a conversation with your partner. See the reassurance in their eyes. See what they say about how they feel. They may say, hey, you know what? I never even thought about it. Or, yeah, I actually feel the same. And I probably also haven't realized it before. But yeah, I'm worried too because, I'm no longer in my 20s. I'm in my maybe 50s or 60s now. I may no longer have the same hot body I used to have. So I kind of feel that too. But as soon as I see you naked, I just forget about all of this. And I just want to go and be close with you. So talk to each other. See what both of you have to say about it. And maybe in exploring this and sharing very openly about your anxiety, you will feel a bit less alone, because very often we hear things that are not actually real. And as soon as we say them and as soon as we share about them, they kind of lose their power, then become a little bit smaller in our minds, which is an amazing thing about talking about anxiety. And the second thing that we want to do with anxiety is like pretty much with anything when it comes to fear, we definitely want to continue doing what we're afraid of, or as much as we possibly can. Because anxiety typically goes away when we get more exposure to whatever we're afraid of. So, for example, you are, again, using my example with turning off the lights when you want to be intimate. How about you try maybe to leave like a small light on, maybe a candle or just a light night light, or maybe don't fully close the curtains if you are having sex during the day. Maybe just leave a little bit of light just to start with that and see how it feels. You may actually find it interesting and exciting and something different to try. So maybe you will find it a bit risky in your mind, which will add a little bit of spice to however you are feeling. So you can start with that. if this is, of course, a concern for you, because if it's not bothering you that you both intimate in a complete darkness, then that's totally fine too. Absolutely. But if it does bother you and you would like to maybe see your partner and be seen by your partner, maybe your partner would like that, because a lot of people enjoy visual stimulation during sex, then maybe we can start taking steps towards that. But yes, that's pretty much what we want to do. And if things are a little bit too far gone when it comes to anxiety, you can seek professional help, because anxiety can be extremely debilitating and it can be extremely hard to overcome, especially when you have already gotten into that constant pattern of avoidance, which only breeds more anxiety. So most people do have some worries and concerns about their sexual life. Let's take a couple of more. Hopefully it's been interesting so far, and me talking here pretty much into this big open space. Hopefully somebody is listening. So yes, I'll have a go at a couple more questions here from Masha. So let's see which one I'm going to select next. Oh, this is a big one here. So for longevity of a relationship, couples need to be friends as well as lovers. Right. I must say this is a tricky one, because couples come in all sorts, in all shapes. We all have a certain culture and we all have a certain idea, I guess, what relationships look like for us. I would say in most cases, the couples who I see do want to be friends as much as they want to be lovers. And this is, I guess, comes back to us needing to be able to understand each other and talk with each other how we talk with friends. Because what's the definition of a friendship? So friends are typically two people who can expect emotional support from one another when they need that support, or they can rely on each other, and there is this reciprocal relationship, which means, hey, when I need you, I'll come to you, you'll help me, because when you need me, I'll help you. And if we look at friendship from this perspective rather than a perspective of friends or like mates who go and have time with, have fun with each other from time to time, then absolutely, a romantic relationship should have that base where two people absolutely know that when I need you, you're going to be there for me, which is what we define as true friendship in this sense. And yes, those friends also really like each other sexually, and they're typically attracted to each other, or they may not necessarily be sexually active, but they kind of are very much happy about this idea in general. And often when one side of the relationship, let's say the friendship, is lacking, our romantic side of things, which is the sexual side of things, is also suffering. It's like commonly you can look at it as two sides of the same coin called relationships. On one side, you've got that emotional connection, which is, let's call it friendship. And then on the other side, you would have the physical connection, which is the romantic stuff and the intimacy in sex. So if on one side there is a dent, that dent is going to be visible or felt on the other side. But at the same time, we want to be really mindful that there are situations where those two sides, the emotional connection and the physical connections, for some reason are viewed a little bit differently. So a couple doesn't necessarily think about it in this way, and they probably think, okay, I'm here mainly for my family, for example. I'm here with you so that we can create a family together. And maybe it's not so much about friendship as such that we can rely on each other at all times emotionally, because, for example, I get it from other family members, but I'm here with you so that we together build a family and grow this family. We have children, and then we jointly care for them. So such scenarios are also possible, where it's the values that we bring into the relationship, they're quite different. But I would say in a majority of cases, and especially looking at it from the Western world perspective, where we can be quite isolated often, which means, hey, I don't have any friends except but you, really. Often we do have friendship plus intimacy, that together define a relationship. So I hope I kind of gave more or less of a clear enough answer to this, because it's a difficult question, and I am very much aware that not all couples view their relationship from such lens. But I would say, and also, to be honest, not all couples are lovers. And it still doesn't mean that they are not in a nice, loving relationship. So a relationship on its own, it is typically about emotional support and also achieving those goals that together you set for each other. So that aspect of being intimate with each other, if both partners are very clear about it, it doesn't have to be present. So I would say this is also really important to keep in mind, that not all relationships are necessarily based on being sexual either. Of course, the majority of couples typically do want to be lovers as much as they want to be available, or they want their partners to be available for them when they need them. So let's pick another one. So another one I've got here is couples. Okay, Masha. Okay, this is cheeky. Fair enough, but I think it's an important one too. Couples counselors have the ideal intimate relationships with their spouse. Well, what is an ideal intimate relationship to start? How do we define it? I actually really subscribe to the good enough intimate relationship, which is all about that you feel satisfied in whatever relationship you have, rather than having an ideal or perfect intimate relationship. One problem that most couple counselors or couples therapists face, unless you are John and Julie Gottman, that's typically your spouse is not a couples therapist. And it can be also pretty tough for them to live with one, for sure. Imagine when I have a dinner conversation with my husband and then he says something and I say, oh, you're getting all very defensive now. This is one of the 4 horsemen of relationship doom. So, well, you probably can imagine how he might feel in this scenario. He might say, okay, don't therapize me. That's what you do at work. Or we're all human. We're all human. We all make mistakes. The same way how couples therapists do not have perfect relationships simply because nobody has perfect relationships. We may have better understanding of what's going on in a relationship. We typically can see our dynamic a little bit more objectively maybe, but oh dear, for sure, there are moments when I'm like, okay, I do need couples counseling myself. And I often say to my clients, I wish I could find someone who I can see and talk to, but just hopefully this couples therapist doesn't see me as another couples therapist, but just sees me as a partner in a relationship that needs some help. So definitely not the case. I think even those couples that are both therapists, they often say that it's unrealistic to keep this expectation of always being perfect, despite all the knowledge that you might have and despite all the skills and tricks that they might have. But yes, I would say typically it does help because I can, for example, de-escalate much sooner. I can adjust the conversation. I can probably remember to do small things often more than other partners would do. So yes, I have the awareness, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I practice it perfectly, which I also don't expect from my couples either. I just want them to have a good enough relationship where relationship is not completely neglected and where there is respect and there is care for each other. That when both partners feel this is, I do know you love me. I do know you care for me. And I can also see it frequently enough so that I know you're good for me. Sometimes when couples come in and say like, hey, maybe we should separate, I always say, and what will be different in your new relationship? Very often the grass is definitely not greener elsewhere, whether it's in a couples therapist relationship or in a movie. Very often it's just a different grass. It can be fake grass or it can have bugs living in it. Who knows? So grass is not greener. And the best thing what to do is to make sure that the patch of grass that you got, you're looking after as well as possible, and make sure you do your weeding, you fertilize it, you water it regularly, and then it will be an amazing, beautiful lawn that both of you can enjoy. Probably will be pretty comfy. Okay, So on this lawn analogy, the grass analogy, I think I'm going to conclude my first ever solo session of speaking on the Real Relationships podcast. And if you felt that was interesting or was probably thought-provoking, if you learned anything new, or if you have a question to ask for my next solo episode, please reach out and contact us at aliona@alionaserpentine.com.au or join our Facebook group, Real Relationships. I believe you are able to see all the links, all our socials. Yes, you can also contact me at Aliona Serpentine on Instagram as well. Give me a question. I would love to have it from you that I can answer maybe next time. So until then, stay well and keep it real. And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Real Relationships podcast. For more reality-tested relationship information, visit our Facebook group, Real Relationships. Or if you have a question or a guest suggestion for me to interview next, email me at podcast@alionaserpentine.com.au. Stay tuned and stay real.